I think if you're a Texas A&M fan, you have to feel optimistic about where Mike Elko is bringing this program. You look at what he's doing, and I think that there is reason for excitement heading into this year as well as the future. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the Texas A&M Aggies to see what we should expect from them in 2025. Now, an 8-5 season was definitely full of ups and downs. You saw some really exciting things. You also saw some disappointing things. But I think overall, Mike Elko is bringing this program in the right direction. He's done a really good job of recruiting. He's brought in certain talent to be able to supplement what they have. And I think overall, you should feel pretty good if you're a Texas A&M fan. This year will be interesting. You have a really exciting quarterback. You have some exciting running back talent. You have exciting wide receiver talent. The defense should also be a really interesting group despite some of the departures that you saw. I think maybe even better than what this defense was last year. We'll obviously dive into that more in a little bit. Now, the three big names that we'll talk about in terms of who you lose are going to be on the defensive line: Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, and Nick Scorton. Those are three guys that you're going to miss, plain and simple, to certain degrees. Overall, I think that that's a trio that you just knew we're going to go pro. So there's not really much you can do about that. And it's not like they're going to play for someone else. Outside of them, you look at Noah Thomas going to Georgia. That's one that you probably wish didn't depart. But overall, I think that the trend with the departures is that there aren't a ton of players that you regret losing or that you didn't think that you could replace. Now, the wide receiver talent did get some additions. You get Kevin Concepcion, KC Concepcion from NC State. You get Mario Craver from Mississippi State. You bring in Amari Niblack from Texas. Jacob Zeno from UAB was an interesting addition. We'll talk more about him in a little bit. On defense, you bring in Deion Hayes and TJ Searcy on the defensive line. Julian Humphrey comes in at corner from Georgia. You also bring in Jordan Shaw and the secondary from Washington. So you bring in some really interesting names that should contribute right off the bat. And that's going to be a really interesting core of guys that we'll dive into more in detail here just in a little bit. But the biggest name that we have to talk about is Marcel Reed. Now, Marcel Reed is someone who definitely took on a bigger role as the season progressed. The Connor Wegman experiment obviously did not work out, and they realized that, hey, Marcel Reed is our guy. He may not be the best passer, but he is someone that is going to lead our offense and be what Colin Klein wants it to be. I think Colin Klein is a very good play caller. I think he understands what he has in Marcel Reed, the strengths, the limitations. He knows how to get this offense to play to his strengths. And I think that at times we saw Colin Klein and Marcel Reed dialed in. There were plays where Marcel Reed was giving defenses all sorts of problems. He was making the right reads, and they were run plays, and teams knew that Marcel Reed wanted to run, but there was nothing that they could do. And I think that if this group gets back to running the football efficiently like they did, which they should be able to with Reed running the show and the running back room, you feel pretty good about what he can do in 2025. Over 1,800 yards through the air last year, 15 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. He also ran for 543 yards and 7 touchdowns. Keep in mind, that wasn't as a full-time starter. So I'm very curious what he can do as the full-time starter. This is a guy who could have 3,500 total yards when it's all said and done, now that he's going to be the full-time guy. Behind him, we talked about Jacob Zeno before. Doesn't really move the meter in terms of excitement for bringing in talented players, but he does give you a little bit higher floor for the backup position with Connor Wegman going to Houston. Miles O'Neill could be part of that as well, but the quarterback position is pretty much going to be Marcel Reed, and then after that, we'll see what happens if they need to go down that route. Jacob Zeno is solid, but he's not going to give you that high ceiling that you maybe want, and he's definitely doesn't have as high of a ceiling as Marcel Reed. Reed is going to be really fun to watch. I think that if he can get the passing a little bit more consistent, then you're feeling pretty good about what you can do through the air. And the passing attack is the question mark right now. The rushing attack is in a great place with the offensive line, with the running backs. You don't have a ton of concerns. And if Marcel Reed can find ways to complement the passing attack or the rushing attack with his arm, he's just going to make that offense so much better. And we already saw what he can do as a runner. He's an absolute threat. Defensive coordinators already have nightmares about how they're going to stop him in 2025. And I'm sure that Colin Klein has figured out certain ways to get him in an even better position to make plays. The running back room is one of the best in the entire country, one of the deepest for sure. You return 4 guys that could all be starters, honestly. And I'm surprised that they're all back. When you look at what this group had last year, Amari Daniels and EJ Smith played 12 games last year. They played the most games of the running back room. Le'Veon Moss only played in 9, and Ruben Owens only played in 2. Now, Le'Veon Moss was a second-team All-SEC selection, 765 yards, averaged 6.3 yards per carry, and 10 touchdowns. EJ Smith, 54 carries for 207 yards, 3.8 yards per carry, 0 touchdowns. Amari Daniels was second on the team in rushing with 661 yards and 8 touchdowns. Ruben Owens, they were really excited about him, but he obviously gets hurt and only plays in the 2 games. But he is someone who has tremendous ability. It's just going to be, is he healthy? Amari Daniels was obviously a great backup to have and eventually became the guy when Le'Veon Moss wasn't able to go. So if there's one group you feel extremely confident in, it's going to be the running back room. Just because we saw that, hey, we have 4 guys. And granted, we did not have 2 of them for a chunk of the season. We have 2 other guys that are just fine. I think that's good depth to have, and especially with how much this team is going to run the football this year, having 4 guys like that, and they're going to get touches. They're going to be in a rotation. That's really fun. And again, any of them could have gone anywhere. They could have gone to a number of schools. I'm sure the NIL was put together to keep them there, and they're very satisfied with that. But also maybe they see that, hey, we could have something special this year. With all 4 of us, you're never going to get tired. You're never going to have to worry really about the depth. You have a good situation going, and that's good to have next to Marcel Reed in the backfield. He knows that, hey, no matter who I have next to me, they are capable of making my life easier. They're capable of making this offense better, and that's going to help them tremendously. Rushing attack is set. It's, again, just going to come down to what does that passing attack do to complement the running attack. Marcel Reed is a big part of that, but also you have some new faces that could potentially play a huge role as well. Kevin Concepcion was a really good player for NC State, a reliable pass catcher who knows how to get open. That's something that Marcel Reed is going to need. He's going to need someone that can get open consistently. I don't think you have anybody that's going to be able to replace Noah Thomas in terms of taking the top off the defense, but you do have some guys that either have the potential to do that or we're going to be able to just create separation enough. Concepcion is someone who can make big plays, but he's more going to be that reliable guy that's open, whether it's in short to intermediate routes, maybe it's deep routes too, but he's going to be more that reliable guy that you can find downfield, and Reed should have some comfort knowing he can find him. Mario Craver comes in from Mississippi State. He is someone that has the potential to be a big-time player, but we'll see how that all plays out for him. But a new face is going to need some time to get acclimated with his new quarterback. That might take some time. Marcel Reed also is working on developing as a passer. So there are certain things that you're going to have to figure out and find ways to be successful with all these moving pieces. Terry Bussey could be someone that is part of this as well. 17 catches for 216 yards, 0 touchdowns, but overall, I think that they feel pretty good about what he brings back to this offense. You also have TK Norman could be part of that, Isaiah Williams. The numbers aren't going to stand out really for anyone. Isaiah Williams had 2 catches for 22 yards. So maybe a guy like Ashton Bethel Roman, 4 catches, 44 yards. None of these guys that are coming back are going to make you think, man, this guy's going to be a major problem right off the bat. It will take some time. There's a reason why you bring in Craver and Concepcion to help this group. You didn't have necessarily a guy that's going to be that go-to reliable guy right off the bat. So you bring in guys like that. You also bring in Jonah Wilson from Houston. Now that's someone who's probably going to have to work his way into the rotation, but that's another piece. There's a reason why you brought him in. because you weren't sure what you have at wide receiver. Tight end's kind of the same thing. You bring in Amari Niblack, who's got some experience. You know, he transferred from Alabama to Texas and now from Texas to Texas A&M. So what is he going to bring to the table? That's a question that you have to get answered. The tight end position overall doesn't have a ton of catches returning. You know, Thielen Mellon Ostrom has the most catches for the returning tight ends at 10 catches for 184 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I think the tight end position is about as wide open as any position on this team. That being said, if Reed doesn't have to be this explosive, I'm going to chuck it deep a bunch of times quarterback. They do need to take their shots, but you can also just be consistent. You can get the ball down the field in chunks. You don't have to make these big time plays all the time. His legs will be able to do that. And you'd rather see a confident quarterback in Marcel Reed who's making those easy throws and then figuring out how to take the top off or relieve some of the stress on this offense with deeper throws. Now, he'll have time to do that. This offensive line is going to be really fun. One of the best in college football this year. You look at the returning talent, there's no reason why this offense shouldn't have success. And we talked about the rushing attack last year. This year should be just as exciting because of what they have coming back. I think you have a number of future NFL players. You have a good depth behind them. Trey Zune was a third team all SEC selection last year. Chase Bisontes is going to be a really fun player to watch at guard. Armaj Reed Adams, opposite of him, that's another guy who has a ton of experience and is a really physical player up front. Demetrius Crownover, a guy at tackle that opposite of Zune could be a major problem for defenses this year. Mark Naboo is going to run the show at center. That's a good piece to have for Marcel Reed. Having an experienced center that knows what he's doing helps your quarterback a ton. And Reed is going to be really excited about that combination in 2025. And he'll feel really confident about his abilities, knowing he doesn't have to worry about what's going on in front of him. He knows that his offensive line is going to do a good job and there's good depth behind him. Now, obviously the starters are the starters for a reason. That's going to be a group that you want to keep healthy as much as possible. And especially if you're going to make a run at the college football playoff, you need those guys to stay healthy, but also you need the depth behind them. So a guy like Ruben Fatheree is going to be a key piece to have. You also have guys like Blake Ivy, Ashton Funk, some other guys are going to be competing for those backup spots. It's just going to come down to how ready are they for when their moment comes to. When are they going to be able to step up? And if their number is called, are they prepared to keep this offense going? Because this offense still has potential. There are certain things that obviously need to get sorted out, but overall you feel really good about what this team can do in 2025 because of the good core that you have returning. Now, Elko's going to have his hands all over the defense along with Jay Bateman. This is going to be a really interesting side of the ball to watch, and things are going to be really fun to watch up front. Yes, you lose quite a bit of talent, but if everything that I heard is actually true, it sounds like the defensive line, even with the losses of Scorton, Turner, and Stewart, could be just fine without them. Now, that's kind of weird to say with 3 NFL talented players, but at the same time, everything I keep hearing about the defensive line and those 3 guys was that they kind of settled almost. It wasn't like they were playing to their potential. They definitely didn't reach the ceilings consistently that they're capable of playing at. So there was definitely room for growth. It just didn't happen. So maybe you're thinking someone else is going to be able to step up and be able to take that step that we need them to take. We don't necessarily feel the best about what that group was able to give us. So now you're looking at who's going to be that guy to step up and play that role. Who's going to be that guy that is ready to take on a bigger role this year? And there are plenty of guys that can do that. You bring in Deion Hayes from Colorado, had a solid year for the Buffs last year. He and Cassius Howell could be two of the best pairings in college football if they play to the potential. Cassius Howell did not get a ton of love because of where he came from. You look at what he did at Bowling Green. I think that a lot of people kind of discredited him because of where he comes from at Bowling Green. And you just think, oh, well, he came from the group of five. How good could he actually be? That's a guy who can be disruptive. And Deion Hayes is a good complement to him as well. Especially when you look at his production from last year, 40 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. So if you're looking to replace some of those guys, you have the talent on this roster that's going to make that happen. You also bring in Deion Hayes to give you another option as the starter. TJ Searcy is someone who could be an interesting option at defensive end. Ryland Kennedy is another guy to keep an eye on. Now, Ryland Kennedy is going to be someone who is a depth piece right now, but if he can take his game to another level, his production is going to increase and he will have opportunities. I think that you had certain starters in place and that's just who you rode with for the time being. But you also didn't feel like you reached the ceiling that you could reach. Howell, Kennedy, Deion Hayes, you feel really good about what they bring to the table, and maybe you're even better this year. Same thing with the interior. I think Shamar Turner had the ability to do certain things, and we just didn't get to see that as consistently as we'd like. Now, part of that would be when you look at what he went through, injuries at times were a factor, but that also kind of just, you have to be able to fight through that sometimes. And I think that this is still a good group, even if they don't have the ceiling. You look at what the interior has coming back. A guy like DJ Hicks could be more productive this year. So if you're getting a collective group to step up, then you don't necessarily worry that your ceiling drops at a specific position. The guy I want to keep an eye on for the interior is Tyler Anyendam from Iowa State. That's a guy who was very productive for the Cyclones, was a disruptive player. And if he's able to do the same things for Texas A&M, you all of a sudden have really good depth behind the starters. You have a guy in Dalen Evans, you have Chase Sims, Landon Rink. Those are guys who could be potential problems for teams as well. It's a lot of teams wanted defensive tackle help. They wanted to be able to do that. And overall, I think Texas A&M did a good job of retaining the right players that they thought were going to be the future of their program. And then you complemented them by bringing in Tyler Anyendam for that position. Maybe you slide him out at defensive end every once in a while, but he is someone that's going to be a quality depth piece, maybe even be a starter up front. But the defensive line plays a huge role. Even with those guys that you lose, I don't think you're upset because of what you have coming back. You feel really excited about that. That's going to help the linebacker position quite a bit. Scooby Williams is someone who kind of came out of nowhere last year. I think a lot of people that saw what he did coming into the program and thought that's about what you're going to get from him. He took his game to another level, and you saw that last year. 43 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 1 interception. He was a great complement to the leading tackler last year, who was also back in Torian York. 82 tackles for him, 10 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. You feel really good about the linebacker position because of those two guys. Those two guys were tremendous in their production, and at times it felt like they were just making play after play. Damian Stanford was also part of that. 33 tackles, 4 tackles for loss for him. So you feel pretty good about what you have coming back at the linebacker position as starters. You also feel good about your third option. Jordan Lockhart didn't have as much production, only played in 10 games last year, but had 11 tackles. So after those 3 guys is really where you maybe have to figure out who are going to be your depth pieces. Maybe Jordan Lockhart is that guy. Kelvin Riggins, those other names could be part of that as well. That's going to be a big question, is how much depth do they have at the position? Because you feel really good about 3 of them, Jordan Lockhart at least showed you some signs. What happens if you have to rotate through some more players? That's really where the question is. But the guys you have in place, especially Williams and York, you feel like you're in a great position to continue winning, continue being productive. And if the defensive line is playing to its potential, then this front group is going to be a big reason why this team has success in 2025. It's also going to help a secondary that I think is going to be really exciting. I think they have quite a bit of talent, and while there are some questions, overall, I think this is a group that is kind of underrated right now. Now, Will Lee III is going to be someone that everybody knows, a second team all SEC selection last year. He was a solid addition via the transfer portal. You feel really good about what he brings to the table after what you saw from him last year. 42 tackles for him, 10 passes defended, 2 interceptions. Opposite of him is where maybe you have some questions. Des Ricks could be part of that. Julian Humphrey will come in and challenge him from Georgia. You have plenty of competition opposite of Will Lee. Javen Thomas could be part of that as well. Could also be a good backup to Will Lee there. The safety position, kind of the same thing where you feel really good about that group. It's just going to come down to how consistent can they be. So a guy like Dalton Brooks had a really good year last year, 59 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 1 interception. Marcus Ratcliffe will be part of that rotation as well, 48 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 interceptions last year. Bryce Anderson is another name to keep an eye on, 24 tackles for him, 1 interception. So that's a good trio to have back. That's a good trio that's going to make sure that your secondary is experienced and in place. Miles Davis had 11 tackles last year. So that's a 4th piece that you'll want to keep an eye on when you're looking at this group. Tyreek Chappelle is back. He'll be at the nickel spot. We saw him at corner in the past. So he is someone who can play multiple positions if you need him to. But you're obviously hoping that the guys you have in place are going to get the job done. Jordan Shaw comes in from Washington. He'll be part of that rotation as well. So the secondary is in a good place overall. I think that they have the right pieces coming back. They have the right guys that know how to play at this level. And that's a group that I think can still take a step forward. This group finished 90th against the pass last year. And part of that's up front, but also the defensive backfield has to improve as well. So overall, it's a good group. It's a talented group. That's a group that has to take a step forward, though, if you want to win more games in 2025. And the schedule is definitely going to be tough. You're playing in the SEC, so it's going to present you with plenty of challenges. And at least right away, you get a chance to work up to the Notre Dame game. You play UTSA and Utah State at home before you travel to Notre Dame. Now, you do have to take care of business against UTSA and Utah State. I'm not saying that they're not going to win those games, but we're learning and we're seeing that year after year, teams need to show that if they want to be a playoff contender or a national championship contender, they have to take things week by week. They have to, if I'm playing UTSA, I need to run over that program and dominate that game. Same thing with Utah State. I can't get caught looking ahead to Notre Dame because that's how we look sloppy. That's how things get exposed. And that's how Notre Dame understands how to beat you. Taking things week by week ensures that you are locked into your process, you're focused on the task at hand, and then you'll be ready for a Notre Dame game that's going to be tough. You have to go to Notre Dame. That is going to be a tough game. It was a tough game even at home. So Texas A&M understands that it's a huge game, but they also understand what has to be done before that. After that point, they get a bye week. So they don't have to worry about having, a hangover game the next week. They get time to either move on from their win and know that, hey, we're in a good position, or move on from their loss and see how do we fix things. The Auburn game isn't as big as the Notre Dame game in terms of the future, but if Auburn is better, that could be a big one. And Texas A&M knows the importance of that one. That one's also at home. You also have Mississippi State and Florida at home. So those Auburn and Florida games are going to be interesting. Those would be games that will show us how successful Texas A&M could be. And then you get 2 road trips to Arkansas and LSU, a bye week before you at Missouri, South Carolina, and Samford at home, and at Texas. So you don't play Alabama, you don't play Georgia, but you do have to play Texas, South Carolina, LSU, Florida, and Notre Dame. It's going to be tough. Winning football games in the SEC is always a challenge. But if you truly are in the right position, the passing attack will be a big question, as well as defending the pass. That is going to dictate how successful this team is. But again, I trust where Mike Elko is bringing this program. I think he's a good coach. He has the right pieces in place. If Marcel Reed takes a step forward, his numbers are going to be really fun to watch, potentially in the Heisman conversation. And that's going to be a really fun team to pay attention to in 2025.